We're going to chat about how we thought Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s 2025 season went. Obviously, a very exciting playoff, but how will that transfer over into 2026? And with some potential roster upgrades, how does that affect Vlad's season overall?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. As always, I'm Brayden. He's Carter First. A lot to cover on this episode, and it's going to be primarily focused on Vladimir Guerrero Jr., not only how he played in 2025. Obviously, we're going to take a look back at his playoffs and his regular season, but more so how that affects the future and where we see Vladdy's career going, especially moving into the 2026 season. And then how will roster additions either help or hurt Vladimir Guerrero Jr., depending on who the Blue Jays go out and get. So, Carter, I guess let's hop right into it. Vlad's 2025 season started off slow. I think in the regular season, there were a lot of people asking, when is the, $500 million man going to come out and have this unbelievable start? And he just didn't have it. But me and you said the caveat to all of this is if Vlad can play very well in the playoffs, that's where you need him the most. And man, did he have a good playoffs. But I'll start with his regular season numbers, Carter, in 2025, a .292 batting average, 23 home runs, 6 stolen bases, an .848 OPS. And I mean, you look up and down this guy's baseball savant page, and it is glowing red. So he does everything right. And I think the one complaint we had, Carter, is that he's, during the regular season anyway, he was just batting balls right into the dirt. A lot of rollovers. It's not even rollovers. He hits it hard. It's just ground balls. And ground balls, I'm going to quote Josh Donaldson here from a bunch of years ago. Ground balls are outs in the MLB. And that's a lot of the time what happened with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And then, you know what? He found the power stride in the playoffs and went absolutely ballistic. I don't know. I guess we'll start here. How did you think of his 2025?
The regular season was disappointing, I would say. It wasn't the worst thing of all time. He still put up some decent numbers and some very good, MLB numbers. But when you're looking at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and what he's, at least fans think he means to this team, he's a $500 million man. You look at the contract, it's the first thing you're going to see with Vladdy. You want a superstar. You want a guy that's going to produce. You want a guy that's going to hit for power, hit for home runs, hit for average, kind of be that five-tool player when you're paying a guy as much as you are paying Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You talked about his ability to kind of just hit the ball into the ground. Vladdy can get away with that a lot more than other players because he's hitting the ball into the ground at 115 miles per hour and it's still flying out of the infield. So he gets more hits than the average MLB player just because of average exit velocities. But that's Vladdy's thing, is you want Vladdy to hit more home runs. And we really saw that uptick in the playoffs. 8 home runs in the playoffs. 23 home runs in 160-ish games that he played for the Toronto Blue Jays. So if you can get that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. caliber production in the 2025 playoffs, this is a different baseball team. You saw that throughout the playoffs on already very good offense throughout the entire 2025 season. When Vladdy turned it up, this offense hit a different level, and that's the player that fans are expecting from Vladdy, with the big contract, being the face of the franchise. So that's kind of what people are looking for. And we've seen a lot of mixture between Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over his short career with the Toronto Blue Jays. In 2021 was absolutely ridiculous. We thought he was going to be the next Barry Bonds. Isn't necessarily that, but is still very good. 2023, very down year. Had a lot of people asking a lot of questions about Vladdy and the contract. What was that going to look like? Should they even extend him? Good year in 2024. 2025 kind of had the same feel as 2023, but obviously picked it up a whole lot in the playoffs. Not necessarily saving his season, but making it making the narrative around that season a whole lot different than it was. And I kind of wanted to just go over his 2025 regular season stats and playoff stats combined. I got this from Guerrero Jr., so he kind of condensed the stats for me, which was very much appreciated. But over the 2025 season in totality, had 31 home runs, 99 RBIs, an .897 OPS, 201 hits, and 70 extra base hits. Obviously had an ALCS MVP in there as well. So that kind of shows shows Vladdy's season in more totality, where you see the downfalls and the peaks and valleys throughout the regular season, and then you see him absolutely turn it up in the playoffs. So when we look at Vladdy, and it's like there's a couple questions that I ask. Number one is, can you find that consistency? What player is Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? I think there's a lot more clarity now when you look at what he did in the 2025 playoffs. That was a huge critique with Vladdy. They were saying, oh, he can't do it in the clutch situations. He can't do it when it really matters. And another question that I have with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is one thing we've noticed over the last 2 years is he's a little bit of a slow starter. He doesn't necessarily play his best baseball in March, April, May. Yes, I'd rather have him play his best baseball in October, but you want him to play over a full 162. So that's another question. How do you get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to kind of start heating up a little bit earlier in the season? And what is this roster going to look like? Is he going to have some protection throughout that lineup? Because right now there is some good players in that lineup. There are players that will have quality at bats, but is there anyone even near Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s talent right now with not having Bo Bichette? Again, Kyle Tucker's not on this baseball team. Like the next best player you could argue is maybe an Addison Barger, maybe it's an Alejandro Kirk. Again, that's not really the argument I'm looking to have here. It's just, what is Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s future going to hold? A lot of it is obviously up to him, but some of that is due to the roster construction and what Ross Atkins is going to put in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, right? And it's not just in regards to Vladdy, but it's in just the construction and makeup of what this team is going to be in 2026. And at this point, we have a lot of questions unanswered. We started this offseason with a massive pitching signing in Dylan Cease, and that's fantastic. But how does that affect the offense that for some part of this year and throughout the last few years had trouble scoring runs and had trouble keeping it consistent? And yes, you start to get contributions from guys like Ernie, Clement, the Addison Bargers. I mean, you go down the list, and the Nathan Lucases, and that all is great, but you can't bank on all of those guys to have repeating seasons. And some of them will be close, maybe, but some of them will drop off, and we won't see that kind of play from them. So you need these quality bats to be in this lineup and doing it every day consistently. And yeah, that was the biggest component in Vlad's game that made everybody sort of turn their heads. So I guess when we're talking about clutch at bats, Carter, I've been one of those guys that have been on the, Vladdy hasn't been clutch during the regular season bit, because you see him come up. And I'm not talking, again, I'm going to say this like I say every podcast, I'm not talking about ninth inning at bats, because he may have a ninth inning at bat that the game's 6 runs away and the game's over, or they're up by 12 runs and kicking a team, and it's like, well, that's great that you added on, but those aren't the moments I'm talking about. It could be in the 3rd inning where you could see the Blue Jays have a tide turning and Vlad comes up to the plate and you need him to drive in maybe the 2 runners on 2nd and 3rd and then ends the inning. It's those kind of situations. It's the feel situations, not necessarily the statistical situations, the 2 outs, 9th inning, because that doesn't show a full picture. And it's very hard it's a very hard statistic to paint a whole picture over an entire season. But there were valleys in that. And I think it's not necessarily on the everyday bit that Vladdy is a clutch player. But you see games, right? You see when he plays the Yankees, it is like a switch flips. When it's in the playoffs this past year, it was like a switch flipped, and you see a completely different player. The swing changes. Not only the swing changes, the approach changes, Carter. Him stepping up there, having that eye, he really doesn't like to take, and a little bit to a fault, doesn't take the first pitch. I mean, I was getting so frustrated watching a fastball go right down the heart of the plate. And
yeah, he does take the first pitch. Yeah, like he just loves to just sit there and watch. He likes to get the kind of the feel. It's almost like the slow pitch approach where you're seeing a pitch, you got to just kind of have it felt out. But from what we've seen playing baseball and watching baseball, a lot of the time the first pitch in the at bat is the best pitch you're going to see in that at-bat. Because a lot of these pitchers, we talk about advantage counts all the time during the regular season, how important they are, not only for the hitter, but for the pitcher as well, and just how the rest of that at-bat is going to result. You get ahead 0-1 or 1-0 to Vladdy. Like, that's a huge difference. Vladdy can get in attack mode if you throw a ball that first pitch. So again, like, if he's going to produce and you're going to see those playoff numbers that you saw in 2025, you don't care what Vladdy's swinging at, when he's swinging necessarily. Again, you want him to swing at the fastball down the middle, but you're going to have all your faith in the world in Vladdy if he's playing that caliber of baseball.
Yeah, and so that sort of goes to my point. It's not the same, right? Because I've been online seeing a lot of people say the same thing about Vlad, and it's tougher now because this was before the playoffs when I was looking at this kind of stuff, right? So everybody's mood changed immediately when he turned it up. And I'm sorry, I'm a little nasally. I'm a little sick right now, but it was a big narrative. And I totally understand where people are coming from in that. And I understand the frustration that brings from the fan base. But in the same respect, if you do have Vlad show up like he does in the playoffs, then it's tough. You can't not care at all, because the regular season, you still have to win a ton of games to get into a place where you're in the playoffs. But it's way more important that you get that Vladdy in the playoffs. So I think this is going to be something I keep an eye on throughout this season, because you can't have an inconsistent Vlad. You can't have a player that you're paying $500 million be inconsistent. That just can't happen. And yes, you can have a down year or a slow year. That's fine. That happens. But it can't happen every year where we are missing Vlad for 2 months of the year because he's just not showing up. That just can't be it with a $500 million man, Carter.
See, a lot of it as well, though, is that if Vladdy does have that off year, can other players on the team help pick him up? Can other teams pick up some of the production? Probably won't be all with the caliber of player Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is, but can other players step up? We saw that a ton of times in 2025, but it's a lot easier for players to step up when they've been in the league for a while, when they have like the all-star credibility, like some of the free agents still on the market. So there's a ton more that we want to go into. I want to go into just how Vladdy's kind of grown as a player as well, defensively, just mentality-wise. We'll go into that in the second segment. And then how does the rest of this offseason affect Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? If you look at the roster right now compared to how it could look if you sign some big free agents, that could impact how pitchers approach at-bats with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We'll dive right into that after this short break.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Like I said before, I think, before we started the pod, and, I wasn't maybe placing a ton of bets. Now I am with FanDuel. I wasn't overly betting on basketball. I didn't enjoy watching basketball, but then, I did. I said, I'll throw a couple bucks down in the games. I really started to enjoy those games a lot more, and have started to get back into basketball, and that's thanks to FanDuel. And some of their deals that pop up in this NBA Happy Hour are super cool. So I'm telling you guys, take advantage of all of this. Again, before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So, Carter, as we continue, I think the way that you ended this last segment was perfect, because that is one thing that I really desperately wanted to talk about, and that does not get enough attention when it comes to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., is his defensive growth. And, it's unbelievable. I have people that, I work with or I'm friends with that maybe before this season obviously didn't see Vladdy as a very good defender. And even when he won the Gold Glove, Carter, I think there were a lot of question marks. Like, is he that good of a defender to win the Gold Glove? This season, Carter, it put me completely away. I am all on the Vladdy as a good fair first baseman movement, because he makes plays that other people just don't. The stretches out the one way, the grab and tag sometimes where a throw was off the base, and the hard hit balls. He comes from playing third base, the hot corner. He gets a little bit of that at first base, and when that happens, he tends to make the play. And yes, once in a blue moon, you'll get a Vladdy boot or a missed scoop or something like that. But I think for the majority of it, he steals more outs than he doesn't, right?
He has taken significant strides in his defensive game, just in his maturity on the baseball field. I was not very high. I was one of those guys that was not very high on Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s defense going into 2025. Because a lot of it, I just found he made a lot of stupid mental errors. Like, he was almost immature on the baseball field, being a little bit reckless with the baseball. But now he's making throws with conviction. He looks like he's just a lot more calm in a lot of these tense situations, not only defensively, but offensively, obviously, as well. In the World Series, taking that first pitch and acting like, it's just like an at bat in practice, like you're just swinging for the home run derby. Like, it just the just patience he has, and it's the calmness. It looks like there's just nothing that is going to get to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in every moment. You see it defensively as well, with just his decisions, him throwing across the diamond, stabbing the ball at first base, and quickly, in a split second, throwing the ball to third base and having one of the strongest first baseman arms in baseball with that third base background is a huge advantage for the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, like the Superman dives into home, like the spinorama tags, like you kind of talked about as well, like the diving plays. It's just the amount of growth we've seen from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., just not even as just a baseball player, but as a person as well, was absolutely phenomenal. In a contract year where you thought, oh, maybe you could take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. You got your huge bag, you got your money, you can kind of set for life. Now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. clearly wants to win. He shows that in his effort at the baseball field, whether it's in the dugout, it's in the clubhouse with his teammates helping them out. Like, this guy cares about baseball, and this guy cares about winning, and that is exactly the guy that I want as the face of this franchise.
Carter, I think back to a few years ago, right? It was the having too much fun mentality that was going on within the Toronto Blue Jays fan community. And I was one of those guys. And it was a different type of fun, right? You were seeing games weren't going their way, and instead of being a little bit upset about it, these guys were joking it off, playing it, and that goes right to the maturity aspect of the game. It's not necessarily as a person, even though I think that has grown in Vlad a ton as well. I mean, if you follow him on Instagram and stuff, you see a little bit of like the behind the scenes that goes on. And he seems like he is just a hard-working guy that really wants to put everything into this to win. And I think that mentality was, I think he always wanted to win as a coming up and everything like that. But I think it's really shifted over these past few seasons, and you're starting to see, yes, Vlad still goes out and has some fun. I mean, he's one of the most fun players to watch in all of baseball. But there is that other end of the spectrum here where we do see the competitiveness and the heart and the frustration and everything like that bleed into it now too. So it's not all just fun and games, but you still get a lot of that. And so I think that's really good for the fan base to see as well, right? When your team's doing really good, go have fun, and the fans are going to have fun with you. But then show a little bit of the frustration, show a little bit of that, because that's probably how we're all feeling. And I think Vlad does a really good job of that. So the maturing, not only on the diamond, but away from the game as well, even with his family life and the stuff he posts and other things like that, you're seeing this growth in this player. And I think the one thing that worried me, Carter, was when you go and you pay a free agent this big money, is that, yeah, I got my bag and I'm out, right? But that's absolutely not Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s mentality. From the moment that he stepped into this league, he said he wants to win a World Series in Toronto. And I think you're just going to see that more and more, and that build and build and build until he finally gets it.
We've just seen the emotion really come out of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., especially in 2025, whether it was a Trey Yesavage double play in a big moment or Bo Bichette's home run off Shohei Ohtani in Game 7. I think Vladdy was even more fired up than Bo Bichette was, the crying after the World Series loss. Like, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and that's why it's such an easy guy to fall in love with on the baseball field. It's such an easy guy to get behind in Vladimir Guerrero Jr., especially when he hits 1 million home runs in a postseason. I think that makes it a little bit easier as well. But he definitely likes to mix in his little bit of fun. Yeah, the screaming vommo, the fake catches, in the infield. But he's found a really good balance about it now. And he's a guy that players want to play for. He's a leader in that clubhouse. He's a guy that not only leads by example, but now can kind of lead on the baseball field as well. Like, this version of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not going to get picked off at second base in a playoff game. That's just not going to happen anymore. I think we're kind of past those days with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So we're in for an exciting time in Toronto, as long as Ross Atkins continues to hopefully be aggressive during this offseason, because if he does not add to this lineup, that's going to impact, obviously, the offense in totality, but it's really going to affect Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as well. It'll give pitchers more leeway, having the ability to pitch around him, not having, that slugger necessarily, like fully established slugger that is going to hit 30 home runs behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. unless you have an Anthony Santander bounce back, which we do, but some of you guys may not. I think a lot more people would be much more comfortable if it was an Alex Bregman, a Kyle Tucker, a Bo Bichette. So what is the significance for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in getting one of those major free agent signings coming to Toronto?
Oh, Carter, it's absolutely monumental. There is a reason that the fan base is going this crazy about some of these free agents, because you can't rely on a guy like Addison Barger, who had, yes, a great season, but you can't rely on him to be that oh no, we can't pitch to Vladimir, or we have to pitch to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because we don't want to deal with an Addison Barger. That's not the type of guy or not yet anyway. We'll have to wait and see what he brings this season. But I don't have faith the teams are going to look at Addison Barger the same way they look at Kyle Tucker, and I think you're absolutely out of your mind if you think that. But having a guy, yeah, like you said, the Anthony Santander, possibly. That's a guy that may have that power stroke that could worry teams, so for sure. But, getting the guy like Bo Bichette, right? It's an RBI machine. Yes, Vladdy can hit home runs, but that's not all Vladdy does. Vladdy also gets on base, and you need guys there to be able to build upon an inning. And I think that's the one thing with this Blue Jays team that is always worrying, is that will they be able to get that momentum inning going enough to get a couple runs? And I'm not talking about, bunting across a guy, scoring a run. It's where you build upon each other, from George Springer leading off to the guy in the 2-hole to Vladdy and to whoever, being able to score 2, 3, 4 runs in an inning and capitalize on a big momentum shift in a game. You can't just be relying on one superstar in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to get everything done. This has to be a team atmosphere. That's what it was last year. You could rely on guys 1 to 8, 1 to 9 some nights on being able to push across runs. And I think adding a guy like re-adding Bo Bichette or an Alex Bregman or a Kyle Tucker, pick one at this point, just boasts the scariness of the middle of the order that a lot of good playoff teams should have. You should have a couple guys in the 2, 3, 4, 5 that are terrifying to face, that are going to scare pitchers, that they're going to have to maybe go to a bullpen if you guys are coming up, or maybe switch out this guy, or whatever. It makes other teams have to think about the game in a completely different way than if it's just maybe George Springer, Ernie Clement, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Addison Barger. That's very different than George Springer, Kyle Tucker, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette. That is monumentally different. And so I think it is massive, and I think it's massive for Ross Atkins to be able to lock somebody down here. And I do have faith that he's going to do it. I do think one of these guys are going to come here, but I think not only for the team is it massive, I think for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s success this next season and him being able to build on either home run totals, RBI totals, whatever it is, it gives him a little bit of a safety net as well.
Absolutely. Like with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you want obviously good players in front of him because you want Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hitting with runners on base. You want there to be traffic. With how good of a hitter Vladdy is, you want him in a position to do damage. So you can't just put like randoms that are going to strike out all the time, like 7, 8, 9 caliber hitters at the top of the order. You need some good quality hitters that hopefully can get on base for Vladdy to drive in runs. But with how good Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is, pitchers might opt to pitch around him anyway, even if there is runners on base. And that's why I think there's even more significance on getting a run producer behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because if they do pitch around Vladdy, if they do end up just giving him a free pass to first base, that's a person on first base more times than not. This is going to be a guy that is going to get walked a significant amount, especially if this is the current roster construction. Because like you said, are you that scared of Anthony Santander, especially in regards to Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Are you that scared of Addison Barger compared to Guerrero, Kirk, Varsho, whoever you want to throw in there? There's obviously a very significant drop-off. And we saw this in the World Series with Shohei Ohtani, him getting walked constantly, and the Dodgers really just not having anyone in that position at the time. Again, they had some good players, obviously, but at that time, they weren't getting producers to drive in Shohei Ohtani. They weren't getting anyone to allow him to use his speed and get around the bases, and that might be a problem that the Toronto Blue Jays run into if they don't add to this offense, if they don't add to some of these position players to get that middle of the order bat that can hopefully hit the long ball, hit that double, get that big clutch hit to drive Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and others in.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, we don't talk enough about it, and probably we will do a whole episode on what Bo Bichette did, when we find out if he's coming back or if he's not coming back or whatever it will be. But his importance and significance, when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette are both playing together, it is such a different feeling. So, again, that'll have to be another day that, we have to have the whole Bo Bichette conversation.
And another thing with Vladdy, too, is like, what if he slumps? What if he has that 1 month where he's not very good? And then who else are you relying on in this order to kind of pick up that slack and pick up the production? Like, you hope Vladdy's good through a full 162, but it's baseball. These players are going to have rough stretches. And if Vladdy's not doing it, and there are other players on this team that can definitely be productive, and we saw that throughout 2025, but it makes you feel a lot better if you do have, a guy that's done it previously, a guy that has had, 80 RBIs in a season, a guy that gets 200 hits, you see me like every single season if he's healthy, a guy that can hit 25 home runs and steal 30 bases, whatever it ends up being. You want another guy in the middle of this order to kind of just help just with the structure and with the depth that you have throughout your order.
Yeah, it's the depth for sure, right? Because these guys, I mean, you said it perfectly. These guys aren't going to play 162 games where they're on every single game. You need different guys at different points in the season to step up, and it's a lot easier to step up with a guy like Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette, or Alex Bregman than it is to step up with an Andres Jimenez and a Daulton Varsho, as much as, those guys, were great at some points during this season. But Carter, I want to take a break. Let's come back. I want your prediction on what you think a 2026 season realistically looks like for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We'll do that right after this break. So, Carter, like I said, let's get into it. Let's get into the numbers a little bit on what we think Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s 2026 can look like. And I'm not going to tell you which way to go if you want to be realistic or hopeful or what you think or what you actually think will happen. Just let me know where your head's at.
Okay, without thinking about it too much, because I'm still kind of set in the 2025, like it becoming the end of 2025, getting close to New Year's. We're still reflecting on the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, as easy or as horrible as that still is to do. But with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you want more power. You want more home runs. Just, again, the money aspect, just how you saw it in the playoffs. Like, this guy has the ability to smack the ball out of the ballpark. So I got to hope for at least 30 home runs with Vladdy. I hope that he can wake up on a regular season, on a down-ish year, can have around that 30 home run floor. We've seen that's closer to 20, maybe 25 with the 23 home runs he just hit on not necessarily a bad year, but not the greatest year. I believe in 2023, he also hit 23 home runs. It might have been 24, but it was in that ballpark as well. So I think we've sort of established what we hope is a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. floor, but I'm hoping for a bounce back regular season, not going to be the playoff numbers as much as I would love that. If he can be between 30 and 35 home runs, I'll put it at 33. If Vladdy hits 33 home runs, I'll be pretty happy with that production. With the RBIs, I want it between 90 and 100. I'll just say 95. I'll throw it in there. Weighted runs created plus, I want to be like 25 to 30% better than the average hitter at minimum. I hope it's around 150. I hope he can be a 5-WAR player. But I want Vladdy to be a run producer. I want him to be that clutch hitter. And if he has to sacrifice a little bit of the base hits, a little bit of the average, to get that power stroke back a little bit like George Springer did, that is something that I can get on board with. So if he's around, I'll say 33 home runs if I put numbers on it, 95 RBIs. The hits, it doesn't really matter. I'm looking at the extra base hits with Vladdy. So I'm hoping for not necessarily a bounce back, but a better season than he had in 2025.
Yeah, me too. I had my number right at 33 as well for home runs. The batting average. At my sheet. Yeah, I came down before and stole your answer. The batting average, I'm thinking, I don't think it's going to be another 290 season. I think if he hits 280, 285 with those 33 home runs, I think you're more than thrilled about that with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think we're going to see the walks tick up a little bit. I think you're seeing the patience from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. really shine. So I don't know what his over/under walks are total, but if that's something you can bet on, I'd say bet the over on that one, especially depending on who they add into this lineup. And yeah, he probably will be right around the 5-WAR, Carter, if that's the case. If he hits those 33 home runs, continues to be decent defensively or good defensively. I look at sort of what he's done in the past few years just in terms of WAR, right? In 2024, he was a 6.2 WAR. In 2022, he's a 4 WAR. This year, he's a 4.6 WAR. So the numbers are a little bit all over the place. That takes into account hitting, fielding, everything. So I'm interested in a 5 WAR Vladimir Guerrero Jr. getting back up and sort of raising that. And I think not only the home run power, but the walk rate, I think that would get him there or pretty close to.
Yeah, with Vladdy, like he had an 11.9 walk rate, so I guess that can kind of be your number if you think it's the over-under. I guess that's the one we'll use for this podcast. But with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., one thing I kind of want to end the episode on this is that one thing that not a lot of people talk about is just his ability to be available. The best ability is availability, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just plays games every single year. Knock on wood, hasn't been on the injured list. I think 2020 would have been the last time that would have been a possibility, but I can't remember of a time Vladdy had a major injury. But since 2021, this guy's played at least 156 games, beating this year in 2023, being the lowest at 156. You got 159 on here, 160, 161 in 2021. So you have a guy, a slugger, one of the best hitters in all of baseball, that is available to you pretty much at your disposal. That is a huge necessity for a team, and that's a very underrated fact that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is just on the baseball field whenever he can be.
No, and you know what? That's exactly it. When you pay a guy that much money, that is the type of player you want. You want a guy that's going to be out there every single day that can at least give you something, right? Even if it's not their best stuff that necessarily day, they're going to probably contribute some way. And that is why you pay some of these guys the big bucks. You know, if you're paying Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and he's only playing 125 games every season, that might be a little bit harder to get behind. But him being this available is absolutely a major component to this, right? That's the one, if you had to pick one downfall of Bo Bichette as of late, it might be his availability. It might be, you know, again, the injury that happened this last season, that's ridiculous. But, you know, whatever. So that's the upside to Vlad for sure. And, you know, I think him being able to put up these numbers, and I'm talking just batting average here, just batting average numbers, in regards to how many games he played is honestly unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is able to do on a baseball field. And you got to hope for a little bit of better things, I guess. But I'm really just hoping that he gets some help. That's kind of where I'm at. I think that we know what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is relatively going to do. I think he's established his floor at this point. The upside is unlimited. So we got to hope that he can tap into some of that upside. But it's going to be a lot harder to do if this is the roster that the Blue Jays are rolling in. Not that they haven't made some good moves, but I think they shouldn't be done. And I don't think they are done in the free agent market. So Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would definitely be helped by Cal Tucker, Bo Bichette, and Alex Bregman. All the guys that we talk about constantly on these episodes, because nothing is happening in the free agent market, unfortunately, for us and every other Major League Baseball fan. But we just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. All the likes, the comments, subscriptions, everything, all the support recently has been much appreciated. We wish you guys happy holidays. It's a weird time of the year. Maybe not the most biggest priority being the Blue Jays, but hopefully we do still become a daily part of your lives, or I guess 3 times a week now at this point. But Brayden, anything else to add before we do head out for this episode?
No, you know what? We're gonna do a couple more of these just on some key players and just taking a look at their 2025 going into 2026. There'll be a couple other guys we want to zero in on, and we might do a big one in just regards to the pitching staff and sort of take a look back at each of those guys. Maybe we don't need a whole episode, but certain guys in particular. You know, I think we're gonna do a George Springer one coming up as well because how important he was to the success of the 2025 Blue Jays. So you can keep an eye out on that. But like Carter said, have some great holidays. If you got some time off, take advantage of that. And hopefully, you keep come back to the podcast so that you're ready and tuned up for when 2026 gets here.